Commander Zix-Trill's four arms moved in perfect synchronization as he pointed to various holoprojections floating around the Galactic Council Military Academy's lecture hall. His iridescent scales shimmered with what Lieutenant Maxine Max Chen had learned to recognize as smug satisfaction. The alien instructor was, once again, explaining the proper way to conduct military operations. And thus, as we can observe from the Battle of Rigel VII, the human approach of Zix-Trill's secondary breathing holes flared in what passed for a sneer among his species winging it, resulted in an unnecessary expenditure of resources and potential risk to personnel. Max slouched further in her seat, surrounded by various alien species who were furiously taking notes on their datapads. She'd been the exchange officer at the Academy for 6 standard months now, and if she had to hear one more lecture about how humans were the galaxy's equivalent of caffeinated toddlers with plasma rifles, she was going to lose it. Lieutenant Chen Zix-Trill's voice carried that special tone reserved for humans, the same one you might use when addressing a particularly dense pet. Perhaps you would care to explain to the class why your species chose to employ such primitive tactics. Max straightened up, adjusting her United Earth Defense Force uniform. Well, sir, she drawled, drawing out the words, when the hive mind swarms were about to overwhelm the colony's northern quadrant, we decided that ramming our transport ship into their queen might be marginally better than standing around following Protocol 274B, subsection 12. Paragraph 3 about proper fleet formation during a Class 4 invasion. A collective gasp arose from the alien cadets. A Zentarian in the front row actually swooned, their crystalline structure tinkling as they fell sideways into their neighbor. That is precisely my point. Zix-Trill's scales turned a violent shade of purple. The approved response was to maintain formation, submit the threat assessment to Central Command, await confirmation of tactical analysis, and then proceed with the counteroffensive as outlined in the Standard Operating Procedures Manual. Which would have taken approximately 6 hours, Max pointed out, during which time the colony would have been completely overrun. Instead, we lost 1 transport ship, saved 16,000 colonists, and gave the hive mind one hell of a headache, literally. And this, class, Zix-Trill gestured with all 4 arms in exasperation, is why humans are classified as a Class C potentially unstable species in the Galactic Military Index. Their blatant disregard for proper procedure and tendency toward what they call improvisation makes them highly unpredictable and effective, Max suggested helpfully. Dangerous, Zix-Trill corrected, his scales now practically strobing. The purpose of military protocol is to minimize variables and ensure consistent, reproducible results in combat situations. It is not, as humans seem to believe, a suggestion list to be discarded at the first sign of difficulty. A holographic display materialized, showing various human military engagements. Max recognized several famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, moments in Earth's brief, but colorful history of interstellar combat. Observe. Zix-Trill continued, the human tactic known as the Crazy Ivan during the Proxima Centauri skirmish, or this particularly egregious example from the Mars defense, where human ships deliberately vented their reactor cores to create a makeshift smokescreen. These are not the actions of a properly disciplined military force. Max raised her hand again, unable to help herself. Permission to point out that both those tactics worked, sir. The fact that chaos occasionally produces favorable results does not justify its use as a strategic doctrine, Lieutenant Zix-Trill replied stiffly. Now, if we could return to proper military protocol. As the commander launched into another mind-numbing lecture about the proper way to fill out risk assessment forms in triplicate during active combat, Max pulled up her personal datapad and started playing Galactic Crush under her desk. She had a feeling she'd be needing something to maintain her sanity through yet another 4-hour discourse on why humans were the crazy cousins of the galactic military family. Little did any of them know that crazy was about to become a highly sought-after tactical advantage. The morning alert klaxons at the Academy were usually just an annoying way to start the day. But this time, the pitch was different, higher, more urgent. Max was halfway through her morning coffee when her datapad lit up with emergency notifications. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered, scanning the reports. The Academy's advanced training exercise, the one she'd been deemed too unstable to participate in, had gone spectacularly wrong. The kind of wrong that made paperwork-loving aliens lose their various appendages. The massive gas mining station orbiting Kepler's 16 billion, where 47 senior cadets were conducting their final qualification exercise, had suffered what the preliminary reports called a Category 7 containment anomaly. In human terms, something had gone boom that really shouldn't have gone boom. Max sprinted to the emergency response center, arriving just in time to hear Commander Zex Trill addressing the assembled rescue coordination team. And according to Protocol 89 Delta regarding rescue operations in Class 2 hazardous environments, the commander's scales had taken on a sickly green hue. We must first establish a proper command hierarchy, conduct 3 separate risk assessments, and... How much air do they have? Max interrupted, earning glares from every non-human in the room. A holographic display showed the mining station's compromised sections. Nearly half the structure was bathed in angry red, with life signs clustered in 2 sealed emergency pods. The station's rotation had been compromised, causing it to slowly spiral deeper into the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Lieutenant Chen Zex Trill's voice carried the special kind of patience reserved for explaining things to small children and humans. We cannot simply rush in without proper. How much? Air Max enunciated each word like a separate sentence. A Valaxian technician consulted their displays. The emergency pods are rated for 4 standard hours of life support at full capacity. With 47 cadets split between them, they did some quick calculations. Approximately 3 hours remaining. Right, Max pulled up the station schematics on her datapad, so we have 3 hours to get them out before they suffocate. Good to know. The approved rescue protocol for this situation requires a minimum of 12 standard hours, one of the council representatives announced. We must first stabilize the station's orbit, conduct structural integrity analysis, establish safe approach vectors. They'll be dead in 3 hours, Max pointed out. Then they will have died following proper procedure, the council representative replied solemnly. The room fell silent. Max looked around at the assembled aliens, all of whom seemed perfectly comfortable with sacrificing 47 cadets to the god of bureaucracy. She felt a headache coming on. Okay, look, she pulled up an alternative rescue plan she'd already started sketching out. We have 3 Mark 7 rescue pods in the hangar. They're rated for gas giant conditions. We can modify them with additional shield generators from the training simulators, drop in from above the station's rotation, and... Absolutely not. Zex Trill's scales were now cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning disco ball. Those pods are not certified for this specific type of rescue operation. The paperwork alone would take 6 hours to process. We're talking about actual lives here. Max slammed her hand on the console. Real people with families who are probably sitting in those pods right now filling out their final performance evaluations because that's what the protocol demands. Lieutenant Chen, the council representative's voice could have frozen hydrogen. May I remind you that you are here as an observer only. Your species' tendency toward reckless action is precisely why you were not included in the training exercise to begin with. Max watched the holographic display, where the station's spiral was becoming more pronounced. The structural integrity readings were dropping steadily. Even if they somehow stretched the pod's air supply, the whole thing would break apart in less than 4 hours. She took a deep breath and tried one last time. Commander, representatives, honored colleagues. I understand the importance of protocol, but right now we have 47 young officers about to die because we're afraid to try something unconventional. There's a human saying rules are made to be broken. That, Zex Trill replied, is precisely why your species cannot be trusted with rescue operations of this magnitude. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to begin filling out the preliminary paperwork for the Level 1 Emergency Response Initiative. Max watched as the alien officials dispersed to their various stations, each beginning to meticulously document their part in what would ultimately be a very well-organized tragedy. The holographic display continued its countdown. 2 hours, 54 minutes of air remaining. She looked at her datapad, then at the hangar schematics, then at the back of Commander Zex Trill's retreating form. A plan, a wonderfully stupid, incredibly human plan, began to form in her mind. Well, she muttered to herself, already heading toward the hangar. I guess this is why they put court-martial procedures in the manual too. Her datapad buzzed with an incoming message from home. It was an old video clip her brother had sent her, showing their childhood dog being scolded for stealing food. The dog looked guilty, but still had crumbs all over its face. The caption read, "Better to ask forgiveness than permission, right sis?" Max grinned. Sometimes the universe had a sense of humor about these things. She began sending encrypted messages to the few other humans stationed at the academy. If she was going to pull this off, she'd need a team crazy enough to help her break every single regulation in the book. And humans, as Commander Zextrill so loved to point out, were very good at breaking rules. The experimental rescue pod sat in its maintenance bay like a giant metal egg with delusions of grandeur. Max approached it with the casual stride of someone who definitely had authorization to be there, nodding to the security drones as she passed. The access panel blinked red, then green as she applied the security bypass chip she'd borrowed from the Academy's systems office during their last poker night. Either I'm getting better at this, or they really need to upgrade their security, she muttered, climbing into the pod's cockpit. Both came a voice from behind her. Definitely both. Max spun around to find Dr. Raj MacGyver Patel grinning at her, his arms full of what looked like half the engineering lab's inventory. The Indian engineer had earned his nickname by once rebuilding a quantum drive using nothing but spare parts, and something he swore was just really strong tape. "I got your message," he said, dumping the equipment inside the pod. Something about needing to do something incredibly stupid and potentially fatal. That's an extremely accurate summary. Yes. Wonderful. I was getting bored anyway. Did you know they made me fill out 3 different forms just to replace a light bulb yesterday? A heavy thud from above made them both look up. Master Sergeant Diego Loco Ramirez was hanging upside down from the maintenance gantry, his signature aviator sunglasses somehow still perfectly in place. "You started the party without me," he dropped down with the grace of someone who jumped out of far too many perfectly good spacecraft. "I'm hurt, Max, really hurt." "You're just in time," Max assured him. "We're about to steal some experimental equipment and break about 50 regulations." "Only 50," came a fourth voice. Dr. Yuki Patch Tanaka emerged from behind the pod, already wearing her emergency medical gear. "You're losing your touch, Chen." Max looked at her assembled team, the crazy engineer, the adrenaline junkie Parescu, and the combat medic who'd once performed surgery in zero-G during a firefight. In other words, the perfect human crew. "All right," she began. "Here's the short version. Lieutenant Chen." Commander Zextrill's voice echoed through the hangar, his scales now flashing like a malfunctioning Christmas tree. Behind him, a small crowd of alien officials watched in horror as the humans continued loading equipment into the pod. "Step away from that experimental vessel immediately," he ordered. "This is a direct violation of protocols." Actually, Rajay interrupted. Not looking up from the panel he was rewiring, "I calculated that we're violating approximately 123 protocols. A new personal best. 124, if you count the fact that I'm wearing non-regulation socks," Diego added helpfully. Zextrill's secondary breathing holes were working overtime. This is precisely the kind of reckless behavior that might save 47 lives, Yuki suggested, organizing her medical supplies with military precision. "Because last time I checked, those cadets have about 2 hours of air left." "The proper rescue protocols. We'll get them all killed," Max finished. She faced the commander directly. "Look, you can either help us or try to stop us. But fair warning, humans are really good at not being stopped. This is madness. That pod hasn't even been certified for atmospheric operations." "Already fixed that," Raj called out, head buried in an access panel. "Also made it about 30% faster. Turns out all these safety limiters were really just suggestions." The crowd of alien officials gasped in unison. A Zentarian actually crystallized themselves in shock. "If you do this," Zextrill warned, "you'll all face court-martial." "Can't court-martial us if we're dead," Diego sang out cheerfully, checking his rescue harness. "And if we succeed," Max added. Well, then you'll have to explain why following protocols would have killed 47 cadets while breaking them saved them. The commander's scales settled into a defeated gray. You're absolutely determined to do this, aren't you? Yep, all 4 humans replied in unison. The council will never approve. Already gone, Raj announced as the pod's engines hummed to life. Also, technically speaking, we're now stealing Academy property. Might want to add that to the list of violations. Max sealed the pod's hatch, giving the commander a small salute through the viewport. Don't worry, sir. If this works, you can take credit for training such innovative officers. If it doesn't, she shrugged. Well, at least your paperwork will be impeccable. The last thing they saw before launching was Commander Trill beginning to fill out what appeared to be a formal protest against unauthorized human actions form, while simultaneously watching them with what might have been a flicker of hope in his compound eyes. So Diego asked, as they accelerated toward the gas giant, anyone want to start taking bets on how many more regulations we can break before this is over? Focus on the mission, Max ordered, trying and failing to hide her grin. We can count our violations later. I've already started a spreadsheet, Raj announced proudly. The gas giant's swirling atmosphere loomed before them like a cosmic washing machine set to destroy everything. Good news and bad news, Raj announced from his jury-rigged engineering station. Good news is I've boosted our shield capacity by 47%. Bad news is I had to use my lucky screwdriver to wedge the power coupling in place. How is that bad news? Yuki asked, securing the medical supplies. That screwdriver has gotten me through 12 near-death experiences. I'm not sure its luck will hold for number 13. Diego, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, grinned. My abuela always said 13 was an unlucky number. Of course, she also said I'd die young doing something stupid. Well, Max replied, steering them into the first layer of atmosphere. Let's try not to make her a profit today. The pod shuddered as they hit the outer storm bands. On the rear display, they could see the Academy's monitoring feeds were still active. Dozens of alien faces watched in horror as the tiny pod plunged into the multicolored maelstrom. Hey, Diego called out. Anyone want to wave to our audience? A particularly violent gust slammed them sideways. Warning lights flickered across the console like a disco panic attack. That's the thing about human entertainment, Max grunted, wrestling with the controls. The audience loves a good show, Holy Mother of. She yanked the pod into a barrel roll as a lightning bolt the size of Manhattan sizzled past them. Minor shield fluctuation, Raj reported cheerfully, now hanging upside down to reach a damaged panel. Also, is anyone else's hair standing on end? Because mine's doing some interesting things right now. Focus, people, Max ordered. We've got about 40 minutes before those pods run out of air. Raj, what's our status? Well, if you ignore all the red warning lights, which I recommend, we're only mostly doomed instead of completely doomed. The good news is I've rerouted power from the coffee maker to boost our sensors. You monster, Diego muttered. The pod dived deeper into the atmosphere. Outside, the storms painted apocalyptic artwork across their viewports. The mining station's distress beacon pulsed weakly through the chaos, growing stronger as they descended. On the monitoring feed, they could see the alien observers' expressions shifting from horror to something else. Fascination, admiration, the kind of morbid curiosity that makes people slow down to look at traffic accidents. Guys, Yuki called out. The station's structural integrity is failing faster than predicted. We've got maybe 20 minutes before it breaks apart. Raj, Max asked. I can give you more speed, but we'll lose shields. How long would we last without shields? About 30 seconds. After that, we'd be a very interesting cloud of rapidly expanding particles. Perfect. That's 25 more seconds than we need. Diego laughed. I love it when she gets that tone. It means we're about to do something incredibly stupid. Max punched in new coordinates. Raj, kill the shields on my mark. Diego, you've got exactly 20 seconds to grapple that station when we get there. Yuki, prep for rapid evacuation. And somebody please tell the Academy to stop sending emergency abort codes. They're making my console look like a spring break light show. The mining station emerged from the clouds like a wounded animal, trailing debris and venting atmosphere in elegant spirals. The two emergency pods were visible, their lights blinking desperately in the storm. "This is insane," Yuki observed calmly, prepping her emergency medical gear. "I just want everyone to acknowledge that this is completely insane." "Noted," Max replied. "Raj, you ready?" "No, but that's never stopped us before." Shields dropping in 3, 2, 1. The pod's protective field vanished. Immediately, the hull temperature began to rise as the gas giant's atmosphere tried its best to reduce them to their component atoms. "Now, Diego." The rescue specialist fired their grappling system. The magnetic tether shot out, connecting with the station's hull with a clang they felt through their bones. "Gotcha," Diego crowed, reeling us in. "Also, is anyone else's seat melting?" 15 seconds, Raj shouted over the groaning hull. Max fired the pod's thrusters, using the tether as a pivot point to swing them around to the emergency pods. The maneuver would have been impossible with shields, and probably killed anyone trying it without them. 10 seconds. The docking collar extended, searching for a seal with the first emergency pod. 5 seconds. Come on, Max muttered. 2 seconds. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, they made contact. Through the viewport, they could see the wide eyes of the alien cadets inside. "Shields back online," Raj announced triumphantly, his lucky screwdriver now apparently wedged somewhere vital. "And we're only on fire in 3 places." "Diego, start evacuation," Max ordered. "Yuki, triage as they come through. Raj, put out those fires." The alien cadets moved with shocked efficiency, probably too stunned by their rescue to remember proper evacuation protocols. On the Academy feed, the observers were absolutely silent, watching as the humans executed their impossible rescue with the precision of practiced chaos. "First pod clear," Diego announced. "Moving to second, slight problem." The station groaned, twisting in the storm. The second pod was now slightly out of reach. "Raj," Max asked. Way ahead of you, the engineer was already ripping out what looked like important parts of their own pod. "Remember that weird alien tennis game they tried to teach us?" "You're not serious." "I've turned our backup gravity plating into a makeshift tractor beam. We've got one shot to grab them." Max looked at their fuel reserves, then at the rapidly deteriorating station, then at Raj's improvised device that was definitely going to void their warranty. "Diego, take the controls. Raj, do it. Yuki, stand by with the medical kit." The ship shuddered as Raj activated his device. The second pod lurched toward them like a drunk penguin trying to dance, but the seal was good. The remaining cadets piled through. Everyone in Max shouted. A chorus of affirmative chirps, clicks, and whistles answered. "Raj, get us out of here." About that, the engineer looked up from his station, his hair still defying gravity. "Remember how I said we were only on fire in 3 places? Yeah. Make that everywhere. But on the bright side, we've definitely set a new record for regulatory violations." Max turned to their wide-eyed passengers. "Welcome aboard the HMS Bad Decision. Please keep your appendages inside the vehicle, and remember, screaming is perfectly normal during human rescue operations." With a final groan of protest, their overloaded pod turned toward the upper atmosphere, leaving the doomed station to its fate in the clouds below. Behind them, the Academy feed showed Commander Zextrill watching with what might have been a smile, though he'd probably deny it later in the official report. So Raj announced with the calm of someone who'd accepted their impending doom, "Our engines are completely fried, life support is failing, and we're carrying about twice our rated capacity." The overcrowded rescue pod groaned, as if to emphasize his point. 47 alien cadets were crammed into every available space, creating a bizarre modern art piece of limbs, tentacles, and crystalline appendages. Standard protocol for engine failure above a gas giant is to one of the cadets began. If you say submit Form 27B, I will personally eject you into that storm, Diego interrupted. Max studied their trajectory display. They were rising, but not fast enough to escape the gas giant's gravitational pull. Below them, the mining station finally succumbed to the atmosphere, breaking apart in a spectacular light show. Option, she asked. Well, Raj replied, fiddling with his now very bent lucky screwdriver. We could try something completely insane that violates every law of physics and common sense. Perfect. What did you have in mind? He pointed to the remains of the station below. That's about to create a massive thermal updraft, if we time it right. You want to surf an explosion? Yuki asked incredulously. Through a gas giant's atmosphere? In an overloaded rescue pod? Actually, one of the braver cadets spoke up. According to the Manual of Astronomical Phenomena, Section 47, Paragraph 12, such an action would be classified as
Surf's up. Diego yanked the controls, pointing them straight down. The alien cadets screamed in perfect harmony as the pod plummeted toward the expanding fireball. On the Academy feed, Commander Zix had apparently fainted. Raj, Max called out, tell me you can keep us in one piece. Probably not, but it'll be spectacular either way. The explosion from the station's core hit them like a cosmic fist, superheated gases throwing them upward with terrifying force. Warning systems gave up trying to list individual failures and just started playing funeral music. We're all going to die! Screamed a gelatinous cadet. Technically, yes, eventually, Rager shouted back cheerfully, sparks flying from his console. The pod rocketed through the upper atmosphere, trailing pieces of its outer hull, but they were climbing, riding the massive thermal wave like the world's most dangerous surfboard. With a final thunderous boom, they broke free of the gas giant's atmosphere. The sudden silence was deafening. Status report? Max asked, trying to stop her hands from shaking. We're alive, Yuki confirmed, looking around at their shell-shocked passengers. Somehow. That, announced one of the cadets with something like awe, was the most horrifically beautiful violation of safety protocols I've ever witnessed. On the Academy feed, they could see the gathered aliens erupting in unprecedented displays of emotion. Commander Zix, having regained consciousness, was actually applauding. Well, Max grinned, setting course for home. Wait until they see how we're going to land this thing. 1 week later, Max stood at attention in the Academy's main auditorium, trying not to smirk as Commander Zix addressed the assembled students and faculty. His scales had finally settled on a pleasant shade of blue-green that suggested resigned acceptance. In light of recent events, he announced, his forearms clasped formally behind his back, the Galactic Council Military Academy is updating certain protocols regarding emergency response procedures. Max caught Raj's eye in the crowd. The engineer was still nursing a bandaged hand from where his lucky screwdriver had finally betrayed him during landing. Next to him, Diego was wearing his signature sunglasses despite being indoors, and Yuki was quietly updating her days since last human-induced chaos counter from 0 back to 0. While we maintain that proper procedure is essential, Zix continued, looking like every word caused him physical pain. We acknowledge that there may be situations where alternative approaches might be acceptable. The commander's gaze fixed on Max. Lieutenant Chen and her team have demonstrated that what we previously classified as reckless human behavior might better be termed tactical adaptability under extreme circumstances. The new Academy manual materialized on everyone's datapads. Section 47 now included an addendum titled Emergency Response, Human Protocols. However, Zix added quickly, this does not mean we are abandoning proper documentation. All instances of tactical adaptability must still be logged in triplicate. Max raised her hand. Sir! What form should we use for documenting improvisational rescues? The commander's scales flickered briefly to purple before he caught himself. We've created a new form specifically for human operations. You'll find it under Form 42, Documentation of Controlled Chaos. Only one form, sir, Max asked innocently. How reckless of you.